So today we're going to be talking about Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates. I did just make a full predictions and breakdown video to this card when I went to edit it. Not as if I do much editing on my videos anyway. I was quick to realise there's no audio on the fucking video. I am this close to singing World War III by Kanye West. She wanna have an Ferrari. So we're back. We're going to talk about this fight, but we're going to add a little bit of spice to this video. We're going to talk about Ian Garry's delusion right away because I think this guy might need to be checked into a psych ward. I think he is losing his marbles. Let's start off with this video right here. So we've got Ian Garry, MTV, My Room, My Crib, whatever you call that fucking show. He's giving us a wee quick tour of his house. How nice and generous of him. Why has he got this in his room? Now, this is going to be a common thing here when we're talking about Ian Garry losing his mind. Ever since the Shavkat Rakhmonov fight, this guy, I don't know what's going on with him. It is next level delusion. So Ian Garry did step in on short notice to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov at UFC 310. Shavkat was obviously meant to fight Bilal. Bilal had to pull out. So Ian Garry stepped in to save the card, kinda. And in the matchup against Shavkat, it wasn't a great fight if we're being honest. If you go back and watch the fight, it was pretty ass. But Ian Garry had his moments in there. Ian Garry was a big underdog going into the fight, and he definitely over-delivered in terms of his performance. But, and this is the problem here, everybody was giving Ian Garry props after the Shavkat Rakhmonov performance, and I actually think it's gone to the guy's head because the way Ian Garry talks about this Shavkat fight, it's as if he beat him. You lost. I've never ever seen anyone in combat sports celebrate a loss like a win, quite like Ian Garry. Like, this fight took place in December. UFC 310 took place, and Ian Garry is still going on and on and on about the Shavkat Rakhmonov matchup. It's actually insane. Here's another thing we've got. Ian Garry saying, I'm going to knock Carlos Prates out on April the 26th. Then I'm going to make my way to Canada. I'm going to make sure whoever wins that fight faces off with me in the octagon. And I'm going to fight for the belt. That's my plan. So Ian Garry's also fallen into the new common trap that seems to be going on in every single UFC weight class now. Where he thinks because he comes off one win against someone in the top 10 of the UFC. I don't even know if Carlos Prates is actually ranked inside the top 10 in the UFC's welterweight division. He's going down the route of he had a close fight with Shavkat that he lost. So a win over Carlos Prates, to my knowledge, who isn't even ranked inside the top 10, would then mean he should fight the winner of Bilal Muhammad versus JDM. Makes zero sense, and how Ian Garry has ended up coming to this conclusion is what I need someone to sit me down and show me how he's came to this conclusion. Ian Garry is at least one win away from fighting for the title after Carlos Prates. He needs to beat Carlos Prates, and then he needs to face like a Usman, Joaquin Buckley, or Leon Edwards, Sean Brady, because I don't really want to see the rematch between him and Shavkat, to be honest. But he needs to beat Carlos Prates and then beat one of those guys, and then he can talk about fighting for the belt. Coming off a loss to Shavkat, then beating Carlos Prates, if you're able to do so, does not mean you get a title shot. It's actually insane. And then this clip surfaced as well, where Ian Garry was saying that he feels disrespected by the UFC. He says to not even get a call, I felt it was disrespectful. I was just seething when I found out that they're giving it to the guy who's been injured and hasn't fought in a year. It's just irritating to me that I didn't even get the respect of a call. I don't know why I struggled so much to read that there. Now, nice pause there from me for Ian Garry. But I understand his point around the JDM one, because JDM was out for a year. He got injured in the Gilbert Burns matchup. He got his arm broke. We haven't seen him. He was meant to fight Leon Edwards. They pulled him from the fight with Leon Edwards to then have him go in there and fight Bilal Muhammad. But really, when you look at the rankings, JDM was the guy that made the most sense. arguably before Shavkat Rakhmonov beat Ian Garry, when it was Shavkat and JDM, and they were wondering who was next for Bilal Muhammad, even though everyone was saying Shavkat, there really was an argument to be had that it should have been JDM when he was coming off that really impressive win over Gilbert Burns. Now, Ian Garry to say he feels disrespected from the UFC is just insane to me. Why would they phone you when you lost to Shavkat Rakhmonov? This is what I mean about Ian Garry. It is like the delusion is next level. And whenever they're like, people are talking about Shavkat having to pull out of the Bilal Muhammad matchup. Yeah, it was me that injured him in our fight. That's why I had to pull out. You lost. Why do you keep going on about this fight? You lost. I have never ever seen anyone celebrate a loss quite like this. Let it go. And the fact that after the Shavkat Rakhmonov fight, people were actually starting to like Ian Garry again. I actually never hated Ian Garry the way everyone else did, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, I thought it was hilarious, the whole narrative they were playing, calling him a cuck, saying that his wife's baby daddy lives with him and all. I thought that shit was hilarious. Okay, I thought that was so funny. But I always thought, and still do think, Ian Garry is a very well-rounded fighter, and I would not be surprised if later down the line he does fight for the title. But he needs to move past this Shavkat loss. Like, stop talking about it. I don't understand why you have like this tick. It's like he's got Tourette's and he needs to just constantly talk about the Shavkat fight. You had some moments of success. You had his back. You didn't choke him out. You clearly lost the fight. What else is there to talk about? You had a good performance in there. You over-delivered on short notice. Shut up talking about the fight still. It is actually insane to me that he is still going on about it. But let's go over Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates. Now I'm going to give a bit of a breakdown for this matchup. The rest of the fights I'm not breaking down again. I'm just going through them quickly because I cannot believe that I recorded a video and it went fucking missing. So I'm going to talk about this is the important fight anyway. Realistically, this is the only fight anybody really cares about on the card. Yes, the card is stacked, but this is the fight everyone cares about. Ian Garry, Carlos Prates over 5 rounds. I am looking forward to this. I am going to pick Ian Garry. I do think Ian Garry is going to beat Carlos Prates. Now, this is a really, really close matchup because I am picking Ian Garry, but I can also see a world. I think this fight's like 60-40. I'm in favour of Ian Garry. Now, Carlos Prates, again, he has been the one in camp. This is kind of a short notice fight for Ian Garry again. So maybe he's taking this fight on short notice so he has another built-in excuse. That could be a possibility. I don't think it is. But Carlos Prates, yes, he has been in camp. He has been the one in an actual fight camp for a while now because he was meant to face Jeff Neal. Obviously, Jeff Neal had to pull out due to an injury. Then they just pushed Carlos Prates back 2 weeks to then match him up against Ian Garry. Now, a lot of people are saying that, and that's like a big factor as to why they're picking Carlos Prates. But this could be a case of overtraining for Carlos Prates. Obviously, went through a grueling camp for Jeff Neal. That fight got pulled. Then it was a change of opponents within the space of 2 weeks for him to fight Ian Garry. Now, yes, he probably was fight ready for Jeff Neal, but Ian Garry is a completely different stylistic fight than what Jeff Neal is. Also, the big difference is he had trained to fight Jeff Neal over 3 rounds. This is 5 rounds, and that is something that I don't know if I can put my trust into Carlos Prates to go at a decent pace, especially late half of the 3rd round, going into the championship rounds. Now, it's not as if Ian Garry is a guy that fights at a crazy pace either, but Ian Garry, we have seen him go 5 rounds before, and we have seen him comfortably fight a 5-round fight. Like, he wasn't gassed, he was still in there to the very end, where I'm unsure we're going to see that with Prates because the guy's a heavy smoker, and that will play a factor in this matchup, trust me, if it goes into the later rounds. Now, a lot of people are saying Carlos Prates is going to knock out Ian Garry, so it doesn't even really matter about the cardio side of it. I see a lot of people saying Carlos Prates inside 2 rounds, and that could happen because we have seen Ian Garry be hit not a lot throughout his career, but he has been tied clean in a good lot of his fights, especially against guys that are lower level than Carlos Prates. Son Kanan dropped Ian Garry, but again, that was just a bit of, I don't want to say ego's maybe not the word for how he got caught by that, But yeah, even Ian Garry himself said like he was throwing shots in that matchup that he would never typically throw, and that's how he got caught by Son Kanan in that matchup. And that is true if you go back and watch it. Ian Garry was throwing strikes that we never really see from him. I think this is a dangerous matchup. Ian Garry is going to have to be on his bike, especially early on. I think Carlos Prates is going to come out there and put Ian Garry on the back foot. I think Ian Garry will do a good job at landing low kicks, but Ian Garry needs to make sure that he is at a good distance when he's throwing low kicks. Sometimes when Ian Garry is throwing low kicks, he is a bit too close to his opponent, and that could be a problem in here when he is facing Carlos Prates. Now, yes, Ian Garry is taller than Carlos Prates, but Prates does have a 4-inch reach advantage, so that is something that Ian Garry is going to have to be clued in on when he is in there with Carlos Prates. Ian Garry, surprisingly, has really short arms for the size of him in the welterweight division, but a lot of people are talking about this as well, that this is a striker versus striker matchup. And yes, Ian Garry is known for striking, but Ian Garry is more well-rounded in my opinion. Ian Garry is a more well-rounded mixed martial artist than what Carlos Prates is. And I'm seeing a lot of people this week say Carlos Prates is just growing into himself. Carlos Prates is 31 years of age. You know what I mean? It's not as if he's extremely young. The guy's 31 years of age. He's had a lot of fights as well. Ian Garry is the one that's constantly improving. He's moving to these new gyms, which sometimes can be a hindrance, but he seems to have found himself in a good gym at Shoot the Box out in Brazil with the likes of Charles Oliveira. He's 27 years of age. He's going to be constantly improving. He hasn't even hit his prime yet. I think Ian Garry will have to utilise the big cage this fight in the main event. I think he's going to have to try and utilise a bit of cage work, a bit of stalling early on. I would like to see him mix in the wrestling with Carlos Prates if he can. I don't think Ian Garry is a great wrestler. Obviously, he had success against Shavkat, but that was kind of a reversal to get to that position. And obviously, out-grappled MVP, but MVP isn't really a great grappler, if we're being honest. But I do feel like Ian Garry, especially early on, is going to have to give Carlos Prates something different to look at other than just his leg kicks and circling around the cage, because I think if he is only going to do that, it will only be a matter of time before Carlos Prates is able to walk him down, stalk him, pin him up against the cage, and then let the shots go on Ian Garry. I think the outside leg kick from Ian Garry is going to be money early on. Like I said, try and stall out him against the cage, hold him up against the cage, land some knees, initiate some scrambles even, because we're yet to really know how good Carlos Prates' grappling really is. Yes, we've seen him show some good takedown defense against Neil Magny, but outside of that, we're yet to really know how good this guy is at grappling, at his grappling defense. We're yet to really know that. I would like to see Ian Garry try and test that in there, because we have seen Ian Garry get to good positions when he does initiate the grappling. Like I said, got the back of Shavkat Rakhmonov. He got the back multiple times in there against MVP. So Ian Garry is clued on in terms of the grappling. I'm not saying Carlos Prates isn't, but it is something that we haven't really seen yet in his game. I think Ian Garry is going to come on strong in the later half of this round. I do think Carlos Prates is going to slow down. And I think Ian Garry is going to capitalise on that. Honestly, my prediction right now is Ian Garry decision, unanimous. And I know Ian Garry isn't the biggest puncher. Do not be surprised if Ian Garry stops Carlos Prates late on in the fight. I can see Carlos Prates slowing down, his shots being a bit telegraphed, and I can see Ian Garry leaning out of the way and snapping in with a right hand, catching Carlos Prates and maybe TKOing him up against the cage. That is another possibility. Late TKO or decision win for Ian Garry. Ian Garry is going to be the guy to end the hype of the fighting nerds. Now, I'm probably going to be wrong and Ian Garry's going to get flatline KO'd inside 2 rounds, but when I think of the fight, that's how I see it playing out. Ian Garry mixing it up early on, landing the outside low kicks, giving Carlos Prates something to second guess with, and then as the fight goes on and Carlos Prates does slow down, I think that's when Ian Garry's going to be a lot more comfortable in exchanging with Carlos Prates on the feet, and that is where I think Ian Garry is gonna get the win and get the job done. Moving on in the co-main event, Zhang Mingyang is gonna beat Anthony Smith, but I am manifesting an Anthony Smith win. Lionheart, like, it was sad his last fight, his coach died. We're seeing how bad it fucked him up. I would like to see Anthony Smith end his career on a win. Don't think it's gonna happen, but I want to see him end his career on a win. Moving on, Giga Chikadze is going to beat David Onama. I don't think David Onama is that good, to be honest, and I think Giga Chikadze actually is pretty decent. Moving on, Michel Pereira, Abbas Magomedov. This is going to be a fun one. Both of these guys are known for having pretty shit cardio, but Pereira's is especially shit, and I think Abbas Magomedov is better everywhere. I am picking him to win. I'm going for Randy Brown to beat Nicholas Dalby. Ikram Aliskerov is going to stop Muniz early on, inside 2 rounds in my opinion. Ikram Aliskerov, I know he's coming off that loss to Robert Whittaker, but he is someone to watch out for. I think by the end of the year, this guy will be approaching top 10, if not already, in the middleweight division. Matt Chanel is going to beat Jimmy Flick. Now that is concerning because Matt Chanel is so chinny, but I am going to pick him to win. Evan Elder is going to win this matchup. Chris Gutierrez is going to beat John Castaneda. Damon Blackshear is going to win this one. Malcolm Wellmaker is going to beat Cameron Simon, in my opinion. I think he's going to beat him. There's more finishing potential here with Malcolm. I don't know if he is going to finish Cameron. Cameron Simon is more well-rounded, but Malcolm, I think, there's more finishing potential. I think he's going to win this decision. Moving on, Polyana Vienna is going to win this one. It doesn't really matter anyway. I know she's a massive underdog, but it's women's MMA, so who really gives a fuck? Roberto Romero is going to win this one, and Jocelyn Edwards is going to win the prelim opener. So yeah, those are my predictions for Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates. Let me know your predictions in the comments below, and as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Appreciate the support. Let me just check, has this been recording audio? It has. See you in the next one.